Welcome to the Spark by Hollywood podcast. I am your host, Devorah Goldberg. In this podcast, I guide my listeners through a deeper look into the parallel paradigm of Hollywood versus Jewish love, relationships, and empowerment, and uncover which one is truly attainable and sustainable for all to achieve. Thank you for joining. On today's Spark by Hollywood stage, we spotlight The Ellen Show, a show that has been around for so long, and it's really an all-time favorite for so many. It's a show that has provided a lot of love and light for so many people over the years. Ellen is known for her humor, her giving. She gives out cash, she gives out cars. She really makes people happy. She changes people's lives around. And she's known to help terminally ill children and really bring smiles to their faces. Not only smile to those people who she helps, but also her audience members and those watching abroad. Ellen has also showed great respect for the military, for veterans and their families who have been separated while the husbands are being deployed or were deployed. And what she loved to do so many times is actually bring these families together. So she would have the husband come in. I believe most of the time it was husbands, maybe one or two times it was the wife, but mostly she'd have the husband come home earlier than when was anticipated. Many times she brought together the families for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, New Year's, sometimes Valentine's Day. So it was a time where they wanted to spend time together. They thought they'd be separated, and they had this moment of reunion. Where did they have this reunion? On her stage. So at one of these shows, Ellen calls up one of the audience members and she invites her to play a game on the stage. And this woman is blindfolded, so she doesn't know what's going on around her. And at the end of the game, her husband shows up on stage. They pull those doors open and her husband is there and she's shocked and she runs over, and the audience can feel that emotion, that embrace, that feeling that these two human beings, husband and wife, were separated for so long, and now they have the opportunity to be reconnected again. Of course, the added element of the surprise adds the excitement for the show and for the audience, and everyone appreciates it. And obviously that it caused a number of these reunions to happen. And, different military husbands would call in or would write into Ellen and say, describe the situation and see if they can come on the show and surprise their wives as well. And I just want you to put yourself in that moment in the shoes of the husband and wife who have missed each other for so long, who have not seen each other. They've maybe FaceTime, they've spoken, but the physical connection was not there. And feel that emotion when they finally come together. And now I want to change the scene for a second and I'd like to go to the departure gate at the airport, right? So we're either going into the airport ourselves or we're dropping someone off. And we see two people hugging, embracing one another, holding on to each other. And you can feel in that moment, you're just passing by and you don't necessarily know them, but you're passing by and you feel that they're going to be separated for some period of time and they're holding each other close. And we can take the scene to the arrivals gate where two people have not seen each other for so long. It could even be a parent and a child. It could be two friends. But let's put our feet in the shoes of a husband and wife who haven't seen each other for a number of weeks. Maybe it was a business trip. Maybe it was deployment. And because they've been separated for so long, that spark, that flame, that excitement of coming together is that much more palpable. And we as an audience, or just as someone just standing by, can feel those emotions. Now, this podcast is all about being sparked by Hollywood. seeing different scenes that Hollywood portrays to the world and either learning from it or showing a similar paradigm of love and relationships within Judaism. Now, the question over here is this excitement, this explosion of love, of coming together of husband and wife, is this possible to incorporate within our marriage, within our relationships, without having to wait so long to feel this embrace? And if we turn to Judaism, we get the answer. Judaism says yes. Judaism has embedded this concept within a Jewish marriage, and really it's something which is attainable for anyone who would like to have this pulling apart aspect and coming together within their relationship. And what it is, Judaism says that 2 weeks, it could be 12 days, 2 weeks out of a month, husband and wife commit to not being sexually active. Now, how do we determine that 2-week period? Again, Judaism has the answer. When the woman is menstruating, when she starts her period, she's anyways not feeling her greatest. She anyways feels like she needs some time to herself. She may feel bloated. She may feel in pain. And she just wants some alone time in general. So Judaism says at this time, that is when you don't have any sexual activity together. But Judaism takes it one step further. It's kind of like telling someone they can't have their favorite chocolate bar, but it's placed out on the counter or on the table, easy for them to access, easy for them to take. And you're like, really, should I eat it? Should I not? It's not even hidden. It's right there. So it's easy for Judaism or for anyone who wants to incorporate this into their lives and say, okay, fine, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. I'll take a break for 2 weeks. But what's actually stopping them? What's actually going to give them that border that really lets them know this line we're not crossing? And Judaism says a good way to incorporate this is to make sure that any casual touch is not happening either, because we know that a casual hug, a casual kiss can turn anyone off, especially if it's your lover, if it's your husband, wife, spouse, who you chose to spend the rest of your life with. So to make it easier, we take a little bit of a backward stance. We just take a few steps back and say, it's not only about not having sex during this time, it's also about being physically separated. We live in the same house. You can go on a vacation together. You can go out for walks. You can spend time. You can go for dinner. But it's just not that physical touch. And in your mind, what is happening psychologically? In your mind, you're actually consciously not touching. And then when that conscious thought happens, you think, well, how many days do I have left of this? Oh, 10, 9, 8. And you know what? During this time, you may have feelings for each other. And you tell yourself, you tell yourself in your mind, we just wait. We're just waiting. We're committed and we're waiting. We're committed and we're waiting. And what happens is, just like a champagne bottle, which you're holding tight in your hand, and you give it a good shake. I don't know why anyone would do that, because we know what kind of explosion would happen after that. But you're holding your champagne bottle, and you have the carbonation working within the bottle. And it's that carbonation wants to explode. It wants to come out. But the cork is on real tight. But you're waiting. So in your marriage, you and your husband are holding on to this champagne bottle, and you have feelings for each other, but we have a couple more days from this countdown when we can embrace and touch and sexually be involved. And as you have these feelings, you hold on to them, and you let the champagne bottle shake. And when you've reached that moment of connection, when you've reached that moment of finally the 2 weeks off are finished and you're on the 2 weeks on, your champagne bottle is open and it explodes. And it doesn't explode because of something exterior. It doesn't explode because you found some other way to express your love to each other. It's just embedded. It's just because you missed each other. Because you missed each other and you wanted to get back together, boom, there it is. It's interesting because I heard a story from Mrs. Goldie Plotkin. She's a Rebbitzin in Markham, Ontario. And she tells a story that she was once teaching one of her, she's a Chabad Shlucha in Markham, Ontario, and she was teaching one of her community members who was a bride to get married. She was teaching her the laws of Judaism as it applies to marriage. And this woman had her fiance was a well-known psychiatrist in the city, and she was sitting in one of these classes, and Goldie can tell that she wasn't particularly interested. She was kind of like giving some kind of attitude, and she wasn't really completely there. Okay, so the class is over, and this woman goes home. She goes to her fiance, and he tells her, "So, how was the class?" And she said, "Oh, this is ridiculous. There's this concept of 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. I mean, Judaism is going to tell me how to run my marriage. I mean, I don't have 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off now. Why would I do that just because I'm Jewish, I'm married, just because these are the laws?" And her fiance answers her like this. That's so interesting, because when I have couples coming to me in my office and they have marital issues, do you know what I tell them? I tell them, first off, before any advice, practice 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. I mean, this is scientifically proven that it works. And he says, and now I know it's backed by Judaism. Actually, now I know it's sourced in Judaism. Absolutely. We are keeping these laws. We are maintaining this kind of relationship within our marriage, and we will be committed to it. It's interesting because I recently found out that Matt Damon actually put out a statement for the world to see that him and his wife have a rule in their marriage, and their rule is similar to what we're talking about, or pretty much the same, where they have a 2-week rule, 2 week on and 2 week off. And not only that, but he also made a request when he was filming one of his movies that he shouldn't be away from his house, from his home, for more than 2 weeks at a time, so that he would be available in this structure that he created in his marriage, that he should be available for his wife during this time. And if he's away and it's the 2 weeks off period, then that works for them. And it's interesting because this is a Jewish concept. And people say, well, is this even applicable to someone who's not Jewish? Well, we see here that Matt Damon is showing us that it's a value in his marriage where he feels that the pulling apart and coming back together works for him, and it makes his marriage successful. Not only that, but he calls his wife his longtime marriage partner. And that just shows his commitment to the marriage, his commitment to his wife. And he sees that this is the recipe that will make his marriage long-lasting, hopefully forever. So the question is, what do couples do during this time? Sometimes people look at it like it's one big fat no. It's one big red tape. You can't be sexually active during this time. And this is a rule. This is a rule for your marriage. And my husband likes to say rules are meant to be broken. But what do we do during this time to make this time period more effective, more meaningful to us? And what we teach in Judaism, what we learn in Judaism, is that it's a time to encourage the emotional support within the marriage. So when we're going on walks, when we're going on dates, when we're having when we're having conversations, really be there in the moment. Listen for your spouse's words. Listen for their disappointments, their frustrations. The power of speech is what you have to express your love for each other. You're not going to do it physically. You're not going to do it sexually, but you can do it with your words, and you can do it so beautifully with words. You can also do it with flowers. You can do it with gifts. You can do it in different ways. You can do it in, as we say, there's various, there's 5 love languages, or maybe there are more. But regardless, there are love languages. And when people figure out what works for them, we can feed that emotional need of our spouse at that time. And then, but at the same time, we feel that we miss each other. We still feel that physical separation. So while we're feeding the emotional aspect, we still feel the lack and the space that we're creating in our sexual lives. And that continues to grow, and that continues to build again in our marriage champagne bottles. One other step that some people will, one other practice that people will have in their marriages is that they will actually have 2 separate beds in the master suite. And that allows them to really have their own space during these 2 weeks off. And it's not necessarily a Jewish law, it's not a Jewish commandment, but it's an extra step that you can take to make sure that, number one, you're giving yourself your self-care, your self-space, which we all crave and we all love and we all need. And it also allows us not to slip by mistake. It's very easy to roll over. It's very easy just to give one peck on the cheek, one hug, and it's very easy to turn each other on. But if we're really committed, then this is one way to really, again, embed, mind the pun, embed this within your marriage and your relationship. So hooking up on that last topic, I interviewed Adriana Rose recently. She is a nanny in Florida, and she's known on Instagram as @non-Jewish-nanny. And she brought us, she spoke about once that she walked into one of these homes where she was nannying the children, and she walked into the master bedroom because she needed to get something, not because she's snoopy or anything. Obviously, she had to be there for a reason. And she just noticed the 2 beds, and she's like, oh, interesting. Okay. And then she didn't think much about it, but then she was in another Jewish home, and she noticed 2 maybe queen-size beds, 2 king-size beds, but there were 2 when she was used to just having or just seeing and knowing just about 1. And eventually she asked one of the moms that she was working for, and they explained it. And she explained when I interviewed her that she thought the concept was so cool that it just made sense. Like, here you have, again, embedded within the relationship, the concept that if you want your space, you have it. And if you don't have to wait for that argument to happen and that friction to happen to move out of the 1 bed in the master bedroom, move out of the room, move into the guest room, and then it's like a thing. I'm sleeping in the guest room. In Judaism, we're always sleeping in the 2nd bed, if needed, if it's that time of month. And that's that time of sleeping in that 2nd bed, again, creates that yearning to come together into that 1 bed at the right time. So I want to thank you for joining me for today's episode. If you are loving the Spark by Hollywood podcast, be sure to follow me on Instagram @SparkByHollywood. And I'd appreciate if you can leave me a 5-star review on any platform that you're listening on, Apple, iHeart, Audible, Spotify, whatever platform it is. And finally, I'd love to hear from you. Send me your feedback. Send me your comments, your questions, your aha moments to info@sparkbyhollywood.com. We'll catch up in the next episode.